Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Ha Rakak Wadash Ma'amah. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone and the elders. Double honors to my apostle as well, Ahur Wan Ben Yasha'Allah of the Lions Den Camp here in Jacksonville, Florida. And salutations to the fellow Akim, Abwafim, and Bunyam children that believe in truth and sincerity. Shabbat Thank Allah, back to another lesson. And Yahweh Tazah's edifying. And you read the title, it says, Russia cargo plane arrives in Cuba, echoing frantic Caracas buildup. A heavy Russian cargo plane that previously brought air defense systems to Venezuela arrived at a military airfield near Havana, Cuba, capital. Havana, Cuba's capital. Late on Sunday, flight records seen by Defense News show the Yushin 276, operated by the Russian government affiliated airline Aviacon Zytotrans, made several stops on its way to Cuba, including in the Dominican Republic, Mauritania, and Algeria after departing from St. Petersburg by way of Sochi, Russia, in late January. It landed at the San Antonio de los Baños air base in Cuba, about 50 kilometers south of Havana, on Sunday evening local time. The same aircraft, registered RA 78765, flew to Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba in late October 2025, aimed at brewing tensions between Caracas and Washington after the U.S. military intervention in Venezuela on January 3rd. All right. And this is all the Lord's doing ultimately. All right. This is the Lord turning back the captivity of the so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians, man. And he's going to do it by way of putting down the system that's in place. All right. Bringing forth World War III. All right. The elder had brought out a lesson not too long ago, going into Revelations chapter 9. All right. Pretty much on how we entering into this nuclear age, all right, and it's set up for ultimately how Esau was set up to gain power, to be the hammer of the earth, to extort these other nations for their resources, into where now we at this end time to where the Lord has set up an adversary against them, ultimately to return back the captivity of Jacob. All right. So, hey, these things have to happen. All right, this system has to go down, has to collapse. Turmoil has to come about in order for the Lord to establish his righteous kingdom, man, for us to be in peace. All right, and this is where we're headed. All right, the wars and rumors of wars, but the end is not yet. All right, but we're nearing the end. We're close. All right. But I'm going to read and continue on, and we'll grab some scriptures. But it says, Cuba has increasingly found itself in the crosshairs of U.S. President the pressure, all right, and the president of, the pharaoh of this modern day Egypt, all right. Cuba has been in the crosshairs after he stuck his chest out when it came to Venezuela and Maduro. He even mentioned other countries that he wanted to take over. Greenland, Cuba, I believe, was one of them, all right. And we all know how Cuba is affiliated with Russia, all right. The history on the Cuban Missile Crisis, etc., all right. And it says the pressure intensified on January 29th when 47 issued an executive order declaring Cuba a national emergency and imposing tariffs on any country supplying Cuba with oil unless Havana aligns with U.S. national security and foreign policy. A 276 can transport up to 50 tons of cargo or up to 200 people. Aircraft of this type are known to have delivered small arms, military supplies, and even mercenaries on Russia's behalf in the past. Aviacon Zytotrans is well documented as flying military cargo and has been sanctioned by multiple countries for these activities. The U.S., Canada, and Ukraine have all sanctioned the company for its role in supporting Russia's military adventures. Allegedly. Aviacon Zytotrans has shipped military equipment such as rockets, warheads, helicopter parts all over the world. The U.S. Treasury Department said in January 2023, when it added the company to its American sanctions list, Aviacon Zytotrans has shipped defense material to Venezuela, Africa, and other locations. The agency continued, it has also been involved in exporting Russian-made weapons to buyers globally for the state-owned company Rosoboron Export. All right, and this is Russia's own entity, so allegedly. All right, and we know America definitely has one. I'm sure any country and major country would have something like this. All right, and you would know the export and the imports of what's coming into your land mass and what's not. All right, so just them pointing out what Russia got going on is not nothing to be gung-ho after. All right, you know, Esau loved to point the finger when the other four are pointing at him. All right. It is unclear what cargo the aircraft is carrying on its current journey. When the same aircraft flew to Venezuela in advance of the U.S. strikes, it delivered Pantsir S-1 short-range and bulk M2E medium-range air defense systems to Caracas, according to Russian lawmaker Alexei Zhuravleva in Russia's state-owned media. Dimensions and weight of both systems makes this plausible, although the bulk would likely have to be disassembled due to its height. They innovative. They got smaller and more powerful stuff. The 276's current mission has striking similarities to its earlier flight to Venezuela, including several stops along the way in northern Africa and the backdrop of rapidly rising geopolitical tensions surrounding a Russian-aligned country in Latin America. Right, the Brics got a whole operation going. In Venezuela, Russian-made air defense failed to protect against the U.S. I'll read that over again. In Venezuela, Russian-made air defenses failed to protect against the U.S. So they boasting. Raid that captured strongman President Nicolas Maduro, which experts have attributed to use error, lack of preparation, and overwhelming U.S. capabilities. So basically, they're trying to downplay Russia's whatever defense system couldn't help them with the Maduro. But if I've seen videos saying that operation, it was almost impossible for it to happen that way. But we know, and due to our elder, all right, expertise and his knowledge, his wisdom, and his understanding, we know they have the frequencies that they can play with, all right? The 5G or whatever the case may be, which allegedly it was used back in World War II, all right? Kind of like a microwave, so to speak, all right? An energy type of weapon, all right? To clear buildings, allegedly. So it says Russia and Cuba signed and ratified a new military cooperation agreement in March 2025, which established the legal framework for joint military operations, training exercises, the exchange of military specialists, consultations, and the supply of military equipment. They blocked in. All right. One of the first scriptures I would like to get is Ezekiel. I start off with Ezekiel chapter 38, all right, because the Lord, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians, he forewarned us about what's to come, all right? And it says what? Prophecy. Pro meaning before, and the size to speak, all right, to cry out about Gog and future invasion, right? But it says, Ezekiel 38:1, and the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against him. All right. So the Lord is against Gog and Magog would represent Russia. All right. So he is against him, but he's going to use him. And say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. Right. Meshach and Tubal is Turkey, Istanbul, that Middle Eastern region. Syrian, Arabic nations, right? And it says, verse 4, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, right? You know, like you take cattle, put a hook into his jaws, wherever the head and the neck turn, that's where you go have to turn. So the Lord's going to do that with Russia spiritually. All right. And remember, Putin had the term of escalate to de-escalate war. All right. You got the doomsday clock moving toward the closest that it's ever been to doom, the day of doom. Because that's ultimately what the Lord has, he has in store. That's his desire. All right. The whole earth not is going to be destroyed, but places upon it is going to be destroyed. It's going to be a Pangea. One of it being the altar of the Lord, being Babylon the Great, Mystery Babylon, that great city. Right. So here in Ezekiel 38:4, it says what? He's going to turn and put the hooks in thy jaws. So this is Ezekiel 38:4. I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, right? All thy army, horses and horsemen, right? Horses represent what? Power. All of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, right? You know, tools for war. Verse 5, the first name, Persia, right? Iran. All right, as Iran means Persia in their language. All right, I believe it was like the early 1950s, which is not that old. All right, not that far from today. All right, is where around when they changed their name from Persia to Iran, and Iran just means Persia in whatever language that they speak. All right, so Ezekiel 38, and we speaking on what? Gog and Magog, meaning Russia. Right, they're gonna be accompanied. With who? Persia, Iran, Ethiopia, right, these African nations, and Libya with them. All of them with shield and helmet, right? Gomar and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee, right? Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them, right? So they're going to be a guard unto these nations. All right, so what you have Babylon the Great speaking on going into Persia, Iran. All right, after already their ill dealings with these particular nations. All right, now they have help. All right, so you moving your ships over there to Persia. All right, and now that's all Gog and Magog is doing. All right, playing chess, checkmate. All right. He moved military surplus south of you. And we know Cuba is not too far from Florida. Meaning that we here in Jacksonville, Florida, mainly so South Florida, like Miami. It's like a maybe an hour. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it, but it might be an hour. 30 to 40 minutes in the speedboat, if that. Right, you have, you had Northern Kingdom coming over here in droves since the 80s with the wet foot, dry foot policy. All right, that's how you know, like the whole ICE thing is all the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, because he want insurrection in his home base, so he can have an excuse. All right, but it's all in the Lord's doing. All right, the Lord control the hearts of these kings. Right, for them to fulfill and ultimately do his will. All right, so this is what we're being presented today, Ezekiel 38, of how Gog and Magog is going to be a chief and a protection for them, a help for these Brics nations. And that's what we're seeing, all right, i.e. in this particular article that we read, all right, the bishop had put in the group chat today from Newsbreak, in regards to just the chess moves and the war tactics that's being made, the placement, all right, So this here in Ezekiel 38:7, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. After many days thou shalt be visited. You know, and we know the many days of them being visited and being them coming back into that old Soviet Union type mindset from World War II. All right, post-World War II, post-Cold War. As the Cold War never really ended, it was just a whole bunch of proxy wars that was going to lead up to now. Again, just bringing it and mentioning, our elder had brought out these Revelations 9. That's the first woe, first and second woe has passed, and the third woe cometh quickly, roughly paraphrasing. Kind of speaking on the Foo Fighters, right? Now it's going into the missiles in Revelations 9. It's Revelations 11, Salaki. Since I mentioned it. It's here in Revelations 11:14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly, right? Verse 15, and the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, right, in the seventh angel, all right, you know, representing the seventh plague, dealing with the Lord's wrath. It says what? Sounded. And there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord, right, Yahweh Shah, and of his of our Lord Yahweh, and of his anointed, right? You know, the Yahweh Shah, the elect, right? And he shall reign forever and ever, man. That's where what we go be in our blessing, with everlasting life, never perishing. All right, this is temporal here. All right, this was captivity. And we know this, those who listening and learning. That's why we have hopes in having first dibs on salvation, right? Sitting at the table, being the first fruits. So this back in Ezekiel 38. That's why we're hastening patiently, moderately. All right, not hastening above the Father, but we hastening the day of doom. All right, the day of war. Because we have hope in the Lord's protection, his grace, his mercy, and his salvation, man, to be saved from the said perils, man, from the destruction that's coming. All right. So this is Ezekiel 38 and verse 8. After many days thou shalt be visited. In the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Verse 9, thou shalt ascend and be like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, right? And thou shalt think an evil thought, and thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, right? And that's why they're trying to rush now to have a missile defense system. Why? Because over there in the state of Israel, they have a missile defense system. That's where all the taxes and all your money go to first before you get it. The 40 acres. Because they the 48ers and the fakers. They not the real people. The real people over here in the land of the north, in the neck of the enemy, where the great gathering shall be. All right. So that's why the Lord is going to make him have a evil thought, and he go turn his nose to where he really need to be turned at. All right. He needs to go come upon the land of unwalled villages, the place that don't have a missile defense system yet. Babylon the Great. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods, right, the melting pot, that dwell in the midst of the land. So, hey, it's a chess move being made, all right, as America moving and inching in too close on Iran, as Iran had vowed to do things in retaliation to their general soldier, Soleimani, as well as the most recent after Trump is inching in on intervening over there. All right, they promised to dish out a whirlwind. All right, so you got Russia with another chess move, checkmate, at America's door. Shalom Habatad Salakia. Shalom Habatad DTA until the next one. Shalom.